House number 3635 is a relaxing place in Mississauga, a city in the province of Ontario, Canada. It is located on the west shore of Lake Ontario, east of Toronto, and is part of the Greater Toronto Area. The city is also the 7th most populous in Canada. The modern house with 6 bedrooms, high windows and a flat false roof has become the centre of a mysterious story. The sole owner of house number 3635 is Caleb Hardison, a 40-year-old man who loves his 2 children very much. He even pinned their names on it as a way of showing affection. After the divorce, the custody of the children initially belonged to his ex-wife, but in 2010, this right was transferred to Caleb. His 2 children only come to stay with their mother on weekends or on pre-agreed days. Caleb is a gentle, kind person, and when he is not working, he spends all his time taking care of his children and is a devoted father. They used to be a happy family, living in this cozy house. However, no one expected that within just 4 years, all 3 family members would pass away, turning this place into a house of death. Neighbors rumored that the house was ransacked, but as the investigation deepened, a strategically planned plot and a truly horrifying truth were revealed. On August 22, 2013, after watching his daughter's final battle, Caleb returned home alone. His 2 children were with their mother at the time. That night, after talking on the phone with his new girlfriend, Caleb put his phone on silent mode and went to bed. He was not sad to know that a tragedy was about to happen. Outside the house, a dark shadow could be seen lying quietly in the night. The next morning, Caleb's co-workers were worried because he did not go to work, did not answer the phone or text messages. This had never happened before. A colleague decided to go to his house to check on him and ask about the maid. The maid was also surprised, saying that she had come to clean early in the morning but did not see Caleb leave the room. When they opened the bedroom door, the scene before them was horrifying. Caleb was lying motionless on the bed, with no signs of life. They immediately called 911. The staff was alerted and the staff quickly arrived. Upon examination, Caleb had 2 deep scratches on his hammock, his right fingernails were powdered and bare, and his neck had purple scratches and abrasions. This sign showed that he had tried to resist before dying. In addition, his hyoid bone was beaten, and the armor around his vocal cords was also bruised, indicating that he had been beaten to death. The time of death was determined to be around midnight. The medical staff felt something was very strange. They realized that they had been to this house before. Caleb's neighbors also felt uneasy, even scared. People eagerly entered the house 3635, believing that it was really answered. By chance, Caleb was not the first person to die mysteriously here. He was not the second but the third. His parents had also passed away in this house before. Within 4 years, the whole family of 3 had passed away at once, almost extinct. This was an unusual thing to the point of being unbelievable, causing the neighbors to gossip. Was the house 3635 really answered as the contemporary sayings? To clarify the truth, we need to go back in time and learn about the first owners of this house, Bill and Bridget Hardison. Bridget was born in 1946 in Ontario. Although she was a girl, since she was a child, she loved adventure and did not want to be bound by rules. With her outstanding appearance and outstanding talent, she participated in many television shows and became a quite successful actress. One day, in the television dressing room, Bridget meets Bill, a witty, humorous and handsome man. The 2 quickly develop a romantic relationship. Despite their different social backgrounds and the intense racial prejudice they faced, Bill was black, and Bridget was white, they were determined to be together. Interracial marriage was frowned upon at the time, but their love overcame all barriers. In Bridget's eyes, Bill was not only handsome, but also intelligent, talented, and trustworthy. In 1969, despite opposition from their families and society, they got married and moved to Mississauga, Ontario, to start a new life. Bridget became a teacher, and Bill worked in a supermarket chain. Both worked hard and achieved great success in their careers. They had a happy and loving life. However, due to health problems, they were unable to have children. So in 1973, they decided to adopt a child. That was Caleb Hardison, who was 6 months old at the time. 2 years later, in 1975, they bought house 3635 and lived there with their adopted son. Caleb grew up in the love and care of his parents. As a child, he suffered from obsessive-compulsive disorder, which alienated his friends. Fortunately, as he grew up, these symptoms gradually disappeared. After graduating from high school, Caleb went to work instead of going to college. Because he did not have a high degree, he could only do manual labor in the transportation and logistics industry. Although the income was not high, Caleb still felt happy. Moreover, his family was quite wealthy, so he did not have to worry much about finances. After many years of working, his father, Bill, rose from an ordinary employee to become a senior leader in the company. His mother, Bridget, also became a member of the board of directors of a school. They were all successful and respected people in the community. In 2000, Caleb, then 27 years old, worked at a retail store. But their seemingly happy family life began to take a different turn when a series of tragedies occurred, turning House 3635 into a place of mysterious deaths. One day, he happened to see Melissa, a 19-year-old receptionist at the company, and was immediately attracted to her. Melissa had just graduated from high school, was a kind girl, loved animals. She had a boyfriend and was engaged, but at the last minute, her boyfriend had a change of heart, indulged in a wild life and did not want to get married. This made Melissa extremely miserable, and she finally broke off the engagement. She longed for a stable life, wanted to get married and be a mother because she also loved children. Harrison's pursuit came at the right time. The two started a new relationship. Harrison was thoughtful, caring and took care of Melissa very much. Every day, he drove her to work. After a few months of dating, they got married and built a home in Jay, about a 30-minute drive from Harrison's mother's house at 3635. They both loved children, so they quickly had a son and a daughter together. At first glance, they were a happy couple, with plenty of children and a fulfilling life. But in reality, every love has its ups and downs, every life has its ups and downs. They often argued over trivial matters. In 2005, after a heated argument, Melissa reported it to the police and Harrison was detained for 3 days. From then on, the two began to separate. Harrison moved back in with his parents at House 3635, and Melissa won custody of the children. After that, they shared custody of the children. In the following days, they continued to argue, mainly over custody. Melissa even made 5 unconfirmed accusations that Harrison or his parents had beaten the children. During this time, Harrison had a new girlfriend, and Melissa also found a new boyfriend, Chris, online. Although she had not officially divorced Harrison, she was still engaged to Chris. Then, something happened. Harrison caused a traffic accident while driving under the influence, killing 1 person and injuring 3 others. On January 9, 2009, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison. During this time, partial custody of his children was transferred to his parents, Bill and Britt. On April 16, 2009, Britt attended a school meeting and returned home at 9 p.m. Because her son was in prison, only her husband, Bill, was in the house. Normally, her husband would turn on all the lights in the house to wait for her to return, but today when she arrived home, the house was dark. This was clearly unusual. She called her husband's name in a panic and eventually found him collapsed on the first floor, not breathing. She quickly called the police. The police and forensics quickly arrived at the scene. After examining the scene, renowned local forensics expert Chad found that Bill's nose, ears, and sternum were broken, and that his head, face, and neck had bruises. He believed that the sternum was broken from a fall, and the bruises on his neck were caused by a necklace. He eventually concluded that it was an accident, with the cause of death being acute cardiac arrhythmia. Although Britt repeatedly claimed that her husband was healthy and had no history of heart disease, the police closed the case after the forensics report. On June 15, Harrison was released from prison. He was very saddened by his father's sudden death, and also felt that something was suspicious. But the body had been cremated, so even if he had doubts, he could not investigate further. He could only endure it silently. Harrison could not have imagined that the nightmare had just begun. On January 21, 2010, Harrison's 8-year-old son came home from school and opened the door to find his grandmother, Britt, lying motionless at the foot of the stairs. The boy panicked and ran to the neighbor's house to report to the police. After an initial examination, the forensic doctor found scratches and bruises on the victim's chin and neck. The body was then taken to the forensic center for a comprehensive autopsy. 2 days later, the forensic doctor concluded that the wound on Britt's neck, the hemorrhages on her cheeks and eyes could be caused by compression of the neck, and she was most likely strangled. In addition, her legs and arms also had bruises, and her ribs were broken. Importantly, the fracture at the back of her neck suggested that she had fallen down the stairs. Therefore, the medical examiner could not determine the exact cause of her death. However, 2 mysterious deaths in a row within 2 years was clearly unusual. This time, the police did not rush to conclusions and began investigating as a murder case. The first suspect was Hardison because he was the sole heir to his parents' huge fortune. In addition, the fact that he was adopted raised further suspicions. At the same time, Hardison's ex-wife, Melissa, told the police that he had a violent personality. Melissa and her husband, Chris, had frequent conflicts with Hardison. They fought over custody for years and even kidnapped 2 of the children, leading to Hardison regaining custody in April 2010. Just 2 weeks after Hardison was murdered, Melissa gained custody of the children and became the heiress to $3,635 and a large fortune. This led police to suspect that they had a motive for the crime. During the investigation, police found a diary belonging to Britt, which contained notes about conflicts with Melissa. On July 7, 2010, Melissa yelled at Britt and Bill, saying that the children hated them and that she had to lock them in the car because they did not want to come to their house. On July 8, Chris threatened Britt through the car window. On July 10, he continued to insult her, saying that she would go to hell for her lies. In 2008, Melissa sent an email to Bill and Britt, stating that if Hardison could not care for the children, no one else would have custody of them but her. When Hardison was arrested for drunk driving, Chris started an online campaign, painting Hardison as a bad, alcoholic, and violent person. He called on the online community to sign a petition demanding the harshest sentence possible, but the results were not as expected. In the end, Hardison was sentenced to only 18 months in prison, which angered Chris, who wanted Hardison to stay in prison for life. When police reviewed Bill and Britt's cases, they discovered suspicious coincidences. In mid-April 2009, Bill planned to take the children on a long trip. When Melissa learned of this, just 2 days later, on April 16, Bill suddenly died. The next day, Melissa and Chris kidnapped the 2 children, leaving Britt in despair. Police issued a nationwide manhunt for them but were unable to find them. In fact, they drove through several cities and changed their identities to avoid capture. They were finally arrested after Chris accidentally used a credit card in his real name to pay his rent. A second twist of fate occurred when Britt, a key witness in the kidnapping case, died suddenly the day before her hearing in April 2010. This led police to suspect that her death was not an accident, but part of a premeditated plot. Despite having no direct evidence, police continued to monitor Melissa and Chris. They collected DNA from items Chris had discarded, including a water bottle and a pair of shoes that had only been worn a few times. Chris's DNA matched the DNA found on Hardison's body. Furthermore, using bank records and surveillance cameras, police determined that Chris had purchased the shoes the night before Hardison was murdered. After gaining custody of their children, Melissa and Chris began moving to hide. Using a tracking device attached to their car, police were able to track them down. They moved to a remote area of London, Nova Scotia, where they found work on a farm. In early October, a search warrant was issued for Melissa's home. Although most of her belongings had been removed, police found 2 laptops, USB sticks, and other important items in the trailer. When they searched the electronic devices, they found suspicious search histories, including how to kill someone without being detected, how to extract poison from plants, and methods of suffocating a person. With all the evidence gathered, the police concluded that Melissa and Chris were the killers. In January 2014, 6 police cars surrounded their Nova Scotia home and arrested them both. They were charged with murder, marking the end of a years-long plot. Chris B. questioned RH, but he steadfastly denied any guilt and refused to reveal anything. After 13 hours of questioning and the evidence the police had collected, Chris finally confessed to the crime. The laugh that was there. I got into his house to go to the bedroom. I hit him in the chest, and when he sprung up, we began to struggle. What surprised the police was that Chris also confessed to killing Britt. She refused the letter, so I then forced my way into the house. What did you do? I hit her a couple of times. I then proceeded to squeeze her neck. He insisted that Melissa had no idea about it, that it was his personal act, and that he only told his wife after he had committed the crime. Of course, the police did not believe him. They had set a trap. A few days after the interrogation, they deliberately locked the 2 of them in a room with a listening device. Melissa and Chris fell for the trap and began whispering to each other. Chris said that he had confessed to killing Hardison, and since he had confessed, his sentence would be lighter. Melissa scolded him for being stupid. The police have no evidence of Britt's death. Why should you confess? This 30-minute recording became the most important evidence in the September 2017 trial. The trial officially began. Chris's trial was quite simple and straightforward. At the scene of Harrison's murder, as well as under his fingernails, the police found a lot of Chris's DNA. There were also rubber gloves, shoes, and a fake alibi. The most important thing was the recording and his own confession. However, in court, Chris still tried to argue. He admitted to killing Harrison but insisted that it was an accident. Initially, he only intended to injure Harrison to have more time with Melissa, but unexpectedly, he used too much force and accidentally killed him. Therefore, he claimed that it was only manslaughter. Regarding Britt's murder, Chris changed his testimony in court, saying that his previous confession was fake, that he lied to protect his wife. However, the police said that his confession as well as the content of the recording were very clear and coherent. The process of the crime that he recounted matched the forensic report, not like a lie. Ultimately, the jury unanimously found Chris responsible for the deaths of Britt and Harrison. He was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole for 25 years. Melissa's trial was more complicated because no trace of her was found at the scene of Harrison's murder. This meant that she was not present at the scene. However, the police believed that in terms of motive, Melissa was the mastermind, and Chris was the perpetrator. The content of the recording also clearly demonstrated that she was involved in the case, an accomplice. Therefore, Melissa was also sentenced to life in prison without parole for 25 years for Harrison's murder. However, in Britt's murder, the jury could not reach a unanimous decision, so she was not convicted in that case. Finally, there was Bill's case. Although Melissa and Chris were both suspects, the police did not investigate the case from the beginning, so there was no evidence. Chris's defense attorney even argued that Bill's sternum was broken by the paramedics performing CPR. Furthermore, Bill's body had been cremated, so no autopsy could be performed. Therefore, neither Melissa nor Chris were prosecuted in the case. Although the 2 perpetrators were eventually sentenced to life in prison, the victims' families expressed strong dissatisfaction with the outcome. They did not want the perpetrators to be punished more severely, but were disappointed with the police. The police had made serious mistakes and shortcomings in all 3 cases. If they had worked seriously and responsibly since Bill's murder, the 2 subsequent tragedies could have been avoided, and the family would not have been destroyed. Gallen, Harrison's cousin, said that this tragedy had completely destroyed the family's trust in the police, leaving them feeling cold. In fact, since Bill's death, they have repeatedly told the police, "You have to investigate these 2. No one else has a motive." But no matter how many times they said it, the police did not care. Moreover, in the Bill and Britt cases, the police did almost nothing. There were obvious injuries on their necks and bodies. DNA technology was very advanced, but the police did not collect DNA and other evidence. In addition, the professionalism of the forensic doctor and the report he gave were also very disappointing. In other cases, this forensic doctor was a reputable local doctor at the time, but after investigation, it was found that he had a bad reputation, was scandalous, lacked basic knowledge of forensic pathology, and was almost an amateur. In 2005, the Chief Medical Examiner of Ontario reviewed his 44 autopsies and found 20 cases with serious errors. Some even said that this behavior was more disgusting than murder. Since he started practicing, he has performed more than 1,000 autopsies. It is hard to imagine how many of them were wrong. Many of the cases he testified in were later re-examined and appealed. Yet such a notorious man was considered an expert by the police, and the investigation was based on his report. The victim's family wanted the police to thoroughly investigate and make public the errors and their causes. At the time, the chief of police at the Peel Police Department, who was in charge of the case, said an internal investigation would be launched. But the investigation was halted after just a month. The Toronto Star repeatedly requested an interview, but she did not disclose any progress. The internal investigation was said to have never been made public. The Toronto Star conducted an independent investigation and revealed a shocking fact. Since 2010, some 640 officers in the Peel Police Department have been disciplined for various misconduct, accounting for nearly a third of the department's total workforce. Not only that, the rate of police officers disciplined for misconduct across the province of Ontario was also very high. These figures show the chaos in the Canadian police system at that time, and there may have been many wrongful convictions or hidden negligence. In October 2019, after Ian retired, Nissan Duppa took over as chief of the Bill Police Department. He expressed deep sorrow over the murder of the 3 Bills, an event that caused great trauma to the victims' families and the community. The investigation, which lasted more than a decade, pointed out many serious problems that needed to be learned. Mr. Dupper then implemented many reform measures based on public feedback and the investigation report from the Independent Police Complaints Review Office of Ontario. 2 police officers voluntarily took responsibility for serious mistakes in the Pritt case and were willing to accept punishment. Additionally, due to serious errors in forensic examinations, the Central Office of the Chief Medical Examiner and the Ontario Forensic Pathology Service have jointly conducted an internal review and reforms to prevent similar errors in the future. As for the perpetrators, Melissa and Chris, both appealed. Chris's appeal was dismissed, while Melissa's was accepted by the court. The Court of Appeals, after an investigation, concluded that in Melissa's trial, the presiding judge had misused evidence, including secret police recordings and evidence of Chris buying shoes. As a result, Melissa's original conviction was overturned. However, the new trial has not yet ended. Melissa's family has posted $285,000 in bail for her release. She is under house arrest, must wear an electronic monitoring device, and is not allowed to go out. It is worth noting that after the crime, Melissa divorced Chris and married someone else in prison. Her 4 children are currently living with her new husband. As for the whereabouts of her 2 children with Hardison, for privacy reasons, this information is not disclosed. Some sources say that they have been placed with a foster family. Today, house number 3635 has a new owner and has been completely renovated, seemingly without a trace of the past. However, every time they pass by this place, neighbors still cannot help but remember the heartbreaking story of the past. A neighbor shared that they hope the new owner will have a happy life here. With the sentence for Chris, who took Hardison's life, and the fate of Melissa still unknown, many people still have unanswered questions. This story opens up many different perspectives on the characters involved. Hardison, a father who loved his children very much, was caught up in the law because of past mistakes. Was he really a good father, or did he have hidden corners that the public did not know about? Some people think he was a victim of family tragedy, caught up in the vortex of hatred from his ex-wife, but others question how he treated his wife and children in their broken marriage. Melissa, a mother who wants to regain custody of her child, is the mastermind behind it all. Some people sympathize with her pain of losing her child, thinking that she just wanted to protect her child, while others condemn her cruel and unscrupulous behavior to achieve her goal. The image of a loving mother and a cold-hearted scheming person intertwines, making it difficult for public opinion to make an accurate assessment of her character. Chris, the perpetrator who confessed, did he really act alone? Is his testimony trustworthy? What was his role in this case? Or was he just following Melissa's orders? These questions remain open, awaiting the judgment of justice. This story is a reminder of the dark side of humanity, of the tragedies that can happen in life. It teaches us lessons about forgiveness, about how to control anger, and about the importance of resolving conflicts peacefully. Whatever the reason, violence is never the right solution. It only brings suffering and destroys the lives of all involved. Let's cherish family affection, listen and understand each other, so that tragedies like the Hardison family's story never happen again.